I'll never forget the first time I drove a vehicle. My grandfather had this 1967 Chevrolet Silverado, and man, it was the most immaculate vehicle I'd ever seen in my life. When I was 13 years old, I was, of course, as I always did as a child, I would spend the summers with my grandfather, and he taught me a lot about hard work, man. He had two jobs. He worked on the railroad, and he worked on the farm, and he did everything. I mean, from baling the hay, feeding the cows. He had me like cleaning out the horse stables, um, jumping on the John Deere and just, I mean, mowing acres upon acres of land, man. And he was really big about being the first person to work and being one of the last people to leave, because he took so much pride in like the craftsmanship of a good day's work. So I learned a lot from my grandfather in that regards. But I never forget, man. Um, he had this truck that I was just crazy about. I'm gonna go back to this truck. So one day I had worked up enough courage to ask my grandfather, could he teach me how to drive? And not only do I want to learn how to drive, I want to practice on that truck right there because my grandfather always had more than one vehicle. He never had just one car. He would have like a Cadillac, then he'd have a weekend vehicle that like he would ride my grandma around then whenever they go out and hit the town. And he had a work truck, and then he had another truck that I'd never seen him drive, but I would always see it when I would visit in the summer. So me thinking that my grandfather is gonna say, "Okay, get on the passenger side and take notes." Mr. RL, man, RL Jones, man. This man said, "Hey, look, I'm gonna go get these keys, and when I get back, you had better be sitting under the steering wheel." So I'm I, I'm nervous as hell. But one thing about my grandfather, man, I knew he wasn't playing when he said that. Now I thought he was playing in the back of my mind because I'm like, all right, I never drove him before, so what on earth is he possibly talking about? But one thing I didn't want no smoke from that old man right there. So I just got behind the steering wheel and I waited for him to come back. Now, where the truck is located, it's in this it's in like this shed, man. And the shed was approximately, I would say, about 300 yards to the end of the driveway, which led to the street. So I'd say about 3 football fields before I got the actual traffic. Now, I had never paid attention to this particular driveway until that day that I drove. And it's weird, man. The way that it was set up that I did not know at the time, it was you drive 200 yards and there's absolutely nothing. And you get to that last 100 yards and there's a speed bump every single 5 yards. I mean, that must have been from the mailbox to about 100 yards into the driveway. It must have been 15 to 20 speed bumps, man. And I found out the hard way uh, what speed bumps were. And, my grandfather came back with the key. And, he said, all right, now, CJ, I'm going to put this key in the ignition and I'm going to turn it. And I want you to put this thing in D, which is for drive. And I just want you to drive. And if you scratch up my truck or hurt my truck in any way, I'm gonna do the same thing to you. I'm gonna hurt you the same way. And my grandfather really meant it. All right. So needless to say, this being my first time driving, I didn't want to mess this truck up. So, at first I was like, hey, you know what, man? I ain't got to drive today. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, I was just tripping, I could drive some other time because I'm thinking in my head, I know I'm going to ruin this truck. I know I'm going to wreck. I'm gonna go out here in traffic and kill us because I didn't know how to drive at the time. But he said, hey, if you take that seatbelt off, it's going to be me and you. And whenever my grandfather said it's gonna be me and you, I knew that shit had just got real. So it would behoove of me to just do whatever he said do. So I crank up the truck, I put the truck in drive, and I take off. Now, at the beginning, I was so afraid I would lay on the gas and lay off. So I would literally stop and go the first, I would say 50 yards. And then he said, hey, drive. And when he said it, like he said it with a certain tone in his voice to where I'm like, all right, he think I'm playing, so let me just drive. So I floored this truck. It must have went from 0 to 85 and like, man, about 20 some yards, right? Now, the first 200 yards of this driveway, I mean, I'm picking up speed. I mean, I'm going, I'm driving, I'm happy. I mean, I feel like I'm a grown man right now. You know what I mean? My first time driving, I feel like I'm flying, man. We get to that first roadblock. It wasn't even a speed bump. It was a speed bump, and then there was like an actual roadblock that was like maybe a few yards ahead of the first speed bump that I bumped into. And I mean, I completely shattered the roadblock. And of course, I put a dent in the front of my grandfather's truck. Now, when I did that, he said, CJ, lay on the brakes. Now, he's calm while I'm like, oh my God, like I just ran over something. We're not close to the street. We're maybe like 100 yards off from the street, all right? But in my head, I had flown down this driveway, literally like drove the front end off by getting to the first speed bump. And then I ran through a roadblock. I don't know who set it up. I guess they were working on the driveway, but my grandfather didn't know or whatever. Needless to say, before I got to the roadblock, I was driving like I had been driving before. Like that wasn't my first time driving. So I was thinking, man, because I was just reminiscing about that a few days ago. I'm like, let me do an episode on roadblocks and why men should avoid roadblocks at all costs. I'm CJ. This is the Be a Man podcast, and let's go. So, men, when it comes to life and attempting to grow and to become successful, and we talk a lot about living in your truth and also discovering what your passion is and pursuing that passion, pretty much becoming the best man that you could possibly be. You could only do that if you avoid roadblocks. All right. Now, there are a plethora of roadblocks that may or do exist, but I wanted to hone in on 4 particular roadblocks that if you avoid as a man, you will be able to accomplish and achieve anything that you want to. So let's get started with the first roadblock. And this first roadblock, these don't really go in any particular order. But I do believe that if you avoid these 4 particular roadblocks, things will be a lot easier for you in society. So the first roadblock, man, I want to talk about is wasting time. Now, wasting time, there are a lot of things you can do to waste time, but I'm going to talk about the things that would be more applicable to today's man. All right. It's always great to have a leisure activity that you engage in, right? So if you're a guy who likes to play video games, it's great that you like to play video games. If you're a guy that likes to go party, man. You a party animal. You're always at the club. You're always at the lounge. You're always at the bar. That's great. But you want to put a limit, or you want to put a cap on the amount of hours you spend in front of your Xbox or your PlayStation. You want to put a cap on the amount of time that you spend at the club. Because if you're at the club every weekend, man, you could be using that time doing far greater things, and not saying that you have to give up those things entirely. And those are just two examples. There's a plethora of examples I could use for wasting time. Um, you can be wasting time, man, in a relationship, man. You could be wasting time at a job that doesn't serve your best interest, and you're wasting your talents and your skills and your potential and everything about you that yells, I can be better. There's so many things you can do to waste time. But I'm saying, for this example, man, if you can get out of the habit of wasting time, what you would do simultaneously is you will create more time for things that you can use that will benefit you. If you're a pothead and you have to smoke weed each and every day, and not just you have to smoke every day, you have to smoke for hours and hours and hours. Or you may be an alcoholic, or you may be whatever the case may be. Wasting time. If you're playing a video game, or if you're going to a club, or if you're smoking for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours in a day, you have to understand how much time you're just wasting, man. Even, you can be a TV watcher, man, and I know in today's time with, the streaming and everything, like maybe people don't watch TV traditionally the same way, but you can't spend 4 hours, 6 hours every day on Netflix and be successful. You just can't, because you're wasting time. So, men, please eliminate wasting time from your day-to-day activities, man. Think about something that you do that you give a lot of time towards that is not bettering you in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, if you're in the gym for 2 hours a day, or if you're at the library, or the bookstore picking up books, and you're trying to exercise your mind. If you jog for an hour a day, those are great things, because you're doing the opposite of wasting time. You're utilizing your time for something that is more valuable. Now, by no means am I telling you to get rid of those things that bring you joy and pleasure in your leisure, because we have to have a balance. And the way to be the best version of a man that you can be is you have to have that balance. So you have to have leisure. If you like to smoke weed, I'm not judging you. Go ahead and blaze up, but don't spend all day smoking weed. You know what I mean? Go ahead and smoke for, 15, 30 minutes. Even if you got to smoke an hour, I ain't cool. But once you pass that, you need to get back to something else, man. You need to get on something a little more productive. So that's the first one. Now, the second one may rub some guys the wrong way, but I really want to talk about it. The second roadblock that all men must avoid is being too thirsty for women. Now, when I gave the example of wasting time, one of the examples I used was going to the club or partying all the time. Now, I have a theory when it comes to nightlife as far as the club is concerned. All right. And I've always said this, and I always will continue to say it. Women go to the club for attention, right? They go for male validation and attention. And men go to the club for sex. They want to go out, meet a girl, get a girl number, and smash eventually. Or if they have enough game or swag to them, they'll go out, meet a girl, and have a one-night stand. But that's generally why people go to the club. Like, girls just don't go out because they want to dance with the girls. They could dance with the girls in the living room. Guys just don't go to the club. I don't know about guys now. I would say that some guys are They may go to the club to be around like other dudes, but I don't know. I won't get into that. But being too thirsty for women, man, is a roadblock. And in today's time, man, we live in a different. I live in a different time than what my grandfather did. So if he wanted to 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 attract a young lady, what he would do is he would go about, pretty much he would have to approach her. There weren't any screens or like weird platforms for him to hide behind if he wanted a girl, right? So when he met my grandmother, he had to, whatever he had to do, he had to approach her and come at her correct in order to get her respect and get her attention and to get her admiration eventually. And in today's time, man, there's so many ways that guys can, I guess they call it like shoot your shot now, right? You can go talk to a girl in person, but one of the ills I would say that technology brought is it gave too many opportunities for people, too many alternatives that takes away from the social experience. So if you're a guy and you spend like hours a day on dating apps, if you spend most of your time on Facebook, inboxing women, trying to shoot your shot at girls in the DMs, there's a time for that if that's something that you want to do, or if you're trying to date, or if you want to get back out there in the game, or you may just be a dog and you're trying to add to your rotation or whatever. I'm not judging any of those things, but there needs to be an amount of time you put on doing that. There's a time and a place also. So when you talk about being too thirsty for women, I'm talking about the guys who are so focused on getting laid that they don't focus on how I'm gonna pay my rent. They don't focus on how could I get a promotion at the job. They don't focus on what can I learn, what skill set can I add to my toolbox to be a more valued member of not only society, but how can I add more value? How could I go from making 40,000 to 60,000? Like they don't think about that. Their sole purpose is thinking about vagina. And I remember my senior year signing day. My baseball coach had came over to me and some of the other guys who were signing to go to our schools for the following fall. He said, "Hey," he was talking to us about something, and I guess like some cheerleaders from another school had walked by, and like who was cutting our eyes, like looking at them, like, oh, you know what I'm saying? We were looking at the females and stuff, and I remember something that my coach had said, and he said, "Hey, focus." You know what I mean? He said, "Booty ain't going nowhere. God will not stop making vagina. I need you all to focus. Go wherever you're going, become successful, make the proper sacrifices, and then you will be able to attract the vagina you want." Now, he didn't use vagina. He said like a P word. But what coach was saying was, if you can sacrifice for a small amount of time, like people think it takes like decades and decades and decades and decades to win out here. And it really doesn't. Depending on what you're doing, you may have to go to school to learn a trade, or you may have to, practice for a few years. But as far as becoming more successful, if you made certain sacrifices, you would get to that goal a lot quicker. And what he was saying was, instead of focusing on girls 100% of the time, maybe focus on something else that'll make you successful. Then you can come back and get the girl you want. It took a few years for that to make sense to me, but it eventually did. So, guys, please, if you don't do anything else, man, please do not be too thirsty for women. And also, too, let me give it to you on the flip side. When you're too thirsty for women, women can sense that you're thirsty for them. And one thing nothing dries a woman up quicker than a thirsty dude. All right. You don't want to come off as if you're like in a drought and you just need Uh, you just gotta have some booty. Like women can smell that, so don't be thirsty out here, all right? You know what I mean? Like, and if you are thirsty, don't be too thirsty, all right? Look, I know sometimes you may go through a drought or you may go through a period where you may not be as, active as you would like to be, but there are alternatives to that until you get on your feet or get to whatever you're trying to go. But never put that P word on a pedestal above your life's mission and your life's purpose. Your goals and your mission and your aspirations should always be higher on the list than getting some booty, man. Because let me tell you, Coach was absolutely right. God ain't gonna stop making women anytime soon. So focus on your goals, focus on your passion. And I'm not saying don't pursue women. That's okay. But when it becomes all that you do because you're so thirsty and you just have to like try to get more and more and more women, cut that out. All right. On this channel, we try to help promote male growth. We want, oh my God, that sounded like bad. But anyway, we want guys to grow and mature and develop and be better versions of ourselves, pretty much. So let me move on to the third one. The third roadblock that all men should avoid is jealousy. Now, Jay-Z had a line in the Takeover, which was a diss to Nas. He had a line where he said, "Male shouldn't be jealous. That's a female trait." And I think he was absolutely spot on, man. Jealousy is something that can consume you if you're not careful. All right. And jealousy is it's also a sign of beta. It's a very beta trait because when you're jealous, you are giving energy to another being, another entity, another person besides yourself. And what jealousy is it's really it's like it's like mis it's like kind of like confused admiration. Like you want to like something, but because you feel some type of way about it, that becomes hate. You know what I mean? And that's what jealousy is. Let me let me read to you guys the definition of jealousy. All right. So you could see like what it is. So the Webster's definition of it is a state of feeling or being jealous. So it's pretty much a feeling of insecurity. It's fear, it's concern, it's over relative lack of possessions or status or something of great personal value, right? Particularly in reference to, like a comparator or a rival or a competitor. And the reason why jealousy is a roadblock, man, is because you gain so much. Like, there's just a negative frequency, man. Like, I'm not going to talk about jealousy for long because it's very self-explanatory. You don't want to be jealous, man. Jealousy and hate are like two peas in a pod, and nothing positive comes from jealousy or hate. Instead of jealousy, try the opposite. All right. You don't have to, be kumbaya, but try to, you know, try to have positive energy about people who are successful and or something that you may not understand because you're only jealous when you're insecure. So try to let go of those insecurities, man, and don't let jealousy hold you up. If there's a peer of yours that's doing something, man, and they could even be doing what you want to do, and they did it before you, or they got on before you, or they made it before you. Don't compare him versus you or you versus her. Don't do that. Because that's only gonna breed jealousy, and you don't want that. So try if you would like. Now, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm just suggesting, right? Try to replace jealousy with inquisitiveness, right? So try to reach out to the person. Try to, study the person. You need to have enough respect for that person's success. Don't try to justify why a person is successful. Um, Look at what they've done, all right, and try to. Success is very calculated, right? So if you want to bake a cake, all you have to do is follow the recipe to baking a cake. It's not rocket science. You don't need a PhD to bake a cake, right? There are specific directions that you have to follow to the T in order to have a successful cake. And success in general is very similar to that. So instead of being jealous, man, let's show love. Let's show gratitude. Let's show support when you see another brother or another sister winning, because winning isn't easy. All right. And you have to lose a long time before you become a winner at that level. Like, you have to lose, you have to take L's. So don't think you're going to start out winning automatically, because that's not going to happen. So, number three, most definitely don't be jealous. And number four is something that I saved for last on purpose, because I feel like man, with the media being the way it is and us growing up in the hip hop culture, this speaks a lot to what I'm getting ready to say. Number four is billionaire desires on dollar menu salary. So this is pretty much keeping up with the Joneses, all right? But I had to throw like a little twist on it. And being one of these guys who are trying to keep up and impress other people, that could really stop you from being successful. You would be surprised how many men are in debt in this country by trying to buy a car that they can't afford. So you have to have a BMW, but your salary may be more of a Ford Focus. You know what I mean? And that's absolutely fine. You have to look at practicality. And I believe once you become a practical person, you won't have the need to impress other people, right? So, and I give you a prime example, right? I drive a 2004 Kia Sonata. Now it's a minivan. It's not easy on the eyes at all, but it's a vehicle that I own and I have the title to. I don't owe a car note to anyone, and it drives fine. I mean, I'll put a few miles on it. Uh, it doesn't change who I am as a person. It enables me to limit my expenses and maximize my income, right? And that's how you build wealth. You don't build wealth by spending more than you make. And you would be surprised how many men are trying to impress other people by driving vehicles they can't afford. They have to have that emblem on the hood, or they have to have, the 2019. Well, guess what? I'm not impressed with the. I wouldn't be impressed with a 2019 unless you can buy a 2019. All right. So if you make $30,000 a year, I'm just throwing a number out. If you make $30,000 a year, why would you buy a $25,000 car? Like, it literally makes no sense to me. Now I'm not gonna go out as far as to say I'm a minimalist, but I am someone who do value ownership. I do value not having to spend my entire paycheck when I get it, regardless of the amount of my paycheck. I do think very practically. If I need a vehicle, what do I need this vehicle to do? I need this vehicle to do pretty much one thing, right? I need this vehicle to get me from point A to point B. And if it can get me to point A to point B consistently, then I value that the same way I would value impressing someone at a red light that I would never meet. Oh, cool. That guy has a BMW, you know? And nothing against guys with, like BMWs or like those cars who may be able to afford it. Some guys can't afford it. And if you're one of those guys, kudos to you. Great stuff, man. Keep working. Try to get like 5 of them. But for the guys out there who's listening to this who may not be able to afford a vehicle that they're currently driving, you don't have to impress people. I really want you to know that you don't have to. We have to quit with this phony dynamic that we live in, to where you have to look like something, to where looking like something is the equivalency of being it. I don't want to look like I have $1 million. I would rather have $1 million and not look like I have $1 million. We have to get out of that way of thinking, to where we're more content with having the appearance of something than actually having it. You know what I mean? And I'm not just talking with cars, I'm talking with anything. I mean, you're wearing like the most recent Jordans, or you have on thousands of dollars in jewelry, but you're living in the projects, or you have the latest iPhone, but you're on your girlfriend's couch. You know what I mean? We as men have to raise the bar. We have to raise our bar collectively. And the way that we raise our bar is by raising our standards. And the way that you raise your standards is you have to be realistic with who you are and where you are. And then you have to look at where you want to go. And the best way to look at where you want to go, the absolute best way, in my opinion, of looking at where you want to go is you have to create a roadmap for how you're going to get there. I don't know if spending 70% of your paycheck on a vehicle, or on, trying to impress someone, I don't know if that's a really good idea. Regardless of whatever the reason may be, if you believe that having a nice car is going to attract women, then you are looking at the wrong women. Let's talk about that. If you believe that anything is worth going in debt so you can impress a person, you are your focus group is the wrong group. And I won't go too much further into that. So my top 4 roadblocks for men. Let's do a recap. Wasting time. Number 2, too thirsty for women. There's always going to be women, fellas, okay? There's going to be plenty fish in the sea. Go become successful and have your pick. Quit wasting time. All right? There's only 24 hours in a day, and how we use those 24 hours will dictate where we end up. Jealousy accomplishes nothing. It just leads to hate, which leads to more death, destruction, and confusion. None of which makes men or society at large better, so stay away from it. And last but not least, billionaire desires on dollar menu salary. I need us men to act our wage. Act our wage, okay? That's what we need to do. Act our wage. If you're not Jay-Z, that's okay. Don't put so much energy and effort into looking like Jay-Z if you're not Jay-Z. It's okay. Very few men are. Be the best version of you. And if you be the best version of you and you're authentically you, I can guarantee you one thing, if nothing else. No one else can be that. I'm CJ. This is the Be a Man podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm out.